So I didn't get the instructions on how to wear the helmet, so I figured, this is going to be more dangerous because I can, attack people like that. But I don't know. Anybody here a Viking that knows better? No? Okay, cool. So like Derek said, I'm Sebastian. If you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm Seba Wita. And so a little bit about me. Literally, I work as a senior developer advocate for Progress. And we develop NativeScript, and I work a lot with Angular and do a lot of cool stuff. This is not specifically a NativeScript talk, but it's good for you to at least have a bit of a background. So basically, NativeScript is a framework that allows you to build mobile applications, an open source framework, and you can use JavaScript, Angular, Vue, whatever you prefer to use. And then as a result, you get a native application with native UI. Which is pretty cool. But that's not what I'm going to talk about today. Today, I mostly will be focusing on code sharing, right? So the goal of this talk is pretty much this. Like, how can I have a single project that can build for me like the Android, iOS, and web applications, right? And just to illustrate that, it's more like, one project to, well, 2 dogs, right? So cute. So the way I see it is basically a combination of, again, like NativeScript that gives me ability to build for iOS and Android, and then Angular that allows me to build for the web. But also Angular gives me like code sharing friendly architecture, right? Like Angular is designed in such a way that I can use it across different frameworks and then even put things together. So some of the core concepts, or like here, this is one of the ideas that kind of struck me that I could actually do some code sharing. So if we have a component like this, like a player component, where we have like a name and a Twitter handle, and then there's a method called sayHello_to, and then you want to build a template based on this. It's all very basic. I can use interpolation to display name and Twitter, and then on click event, I can call sayHello_to, right? And this is how I do it on the web. The cool thing is that I can do something very similar in NativeScript. So using the same TypeScript class, I just use a different template. So basically, again, I drop a couple of labels. I bind to the name property. I can bind to Twitter property. And with button, instead of on click, on tap event, I'm actually executing the same method. I just say hello to mobile. And this basically made me think, like basically, if I could share all that JavaScript code or TypeScript code, but then templates are different, maybe there's something we could do about it. Another one thing that is very important to the whole story, because there's some bits that are, even in JavaScript, that are mobile-specific or web-specific, and that's where dependency injection comes in very handy. So I really love how dependency injection works. And the best example is when you want to make an HTTP call. So if you want to make an HTTP call in the web browser or Android or iOS, what happens is that the actual API underneath is very different, right? So what we do instead is basically we can use dependency injection to bring in the one or the other type of HTTP calls. So you're all pretty much familiar with it. You want to make an HTTP call, you go to your app module, import the HTTP client, you're good to go. So in NativeScript, we basically implemented a NativeScript HTTP client module. So again, I can basically just drop this into my app module, and then I can use the HTTP client. So then later on, when I want to build my services, I can just import the HTTP client, and then use dependency injection in the constructor. And then on my get data, I can just call this HTTP.get. And this is really cool because the same HTTP client works for Android, for iOS, and for the web. So the only difference really is when I import it in the app module, and I'm good to go. So I kind of thought, okay, so these are the basics. I have all I need to kind of get myself started. So this is how I imagine the code sharing project, right? So it's like one big monorepo where I have my navigation configuration, my services directives, my styling. The CSS actually for the web and mobile will be different, so I would want to have them separately. Then I would have my components in there where the TypeScript class will be shared, but the web template, the NativeScript template will be separate. And then when I'm using lazy loading, like all my modules could actually share their components, they will share the navigation. but the ng module configuration will be separate for each of the ng modules, right? Just to import the HTTP client and stuff. So once I have this project, what I need next is some sort of build process that allows me to build a web or mobile application, so that if I want to build for the web, I can take the shared files and the web-specific ones and then build a web application. Or for mobile, I can use the shared files again, but this time NativeScript-specific files, and then build a mobile app. So in order to push things forward, I have to have a way to do this code splitting. How do I have two template files or two ng modules, and how can I distinguish which one is which? So we're using this naming convention. So if you have this name component, what I can do is basically add a second file. So I have my name.component.html, and then for the mobile, I can basically just add name.component.tns.html. So that .tns is basically what I use to say this is a mobile file. Okay? And if I want to add a style sheet, so if I'm using CSS, I can have .tns.css for mobile, and then just .css for the web. And then I can do that pretty much to anything. I can also do it with TypeScript files or any file within my project. So that was the whole idea. So how do you even get started, right? So this is not just the idea anymore. We actually released the whole structure of the project, and you can use it nowadays. And it's built with schematics. So if you install add NativeScript/schematics using npm, you could actually use the Angular CLI to create a code sharing project. So you can call ng-new -c or -- collection. Then you pass in the NativeScript schematic, give it a name. And if you add the -- shared, basically you say you want to generate a shared project. If you don't do -- shared, it will give you just NativeScript only project in this case. So this will give you a starting point to build a code sharing kind of application. So how the build works. So from there, if you want to build for the web, you can call ng-serve, and it's business as usual. You call ng-serve, which uses Angular CLI, which builds your web application. If you want to build for mobile, you will use NativeScript CLI. So in this case, you will call TNS. That's basically for NativeScript. So you call TNS run either Android or iOS, and then -- bundle. So basically, we're saying that we want to use Webpack with the build to bundle it. And the whole build works in 2 steps. The first step is it goes through Webpack, and Webpack will go and look for all the TNS files. So we had that home component.tns.html. That would, in memory, get renamed to just home component.html. So override the web file. And then you pretty much do it for all of those files in the project. And then as a second step, the NativeScript CLI will go and build the application for you, either Android or iOS application, which is really cool. And if this doesn't make sense, I have a small video to illustrate that. So imagine the tiger is a NativeScript build, right? And the duck is all the web files that you don't want to build, right? So we are using Webpack, and then this is how it actually happens. So the tiger is getting very close to the file, and then the file disappears, so that the tiger cannot build it. And then the duck goes away, or sorry, the web file goes away, and everybody is happy. Cool. So I want to do a quick demo to show you how this works. So what I did, I took the Angular Tour of Heroes. How many of you did the Tour of Heroes tutorial? Show of hands. Yeah, quite a few of you. There you go. So I took that Tour of Heroes, and I modified it slightly. So let me build it for the web, and I'm going to very quickly build it for iOS, and it will deploy in a second. So I kind of changed it, so it's not anymore Tour of Heroes. It's actually Tour of Gods. So we're Nenji Vikings, right? So you have Ymir, Odin, Frigg. So you can get a picture of every god, and you can still make Odin a bit Greek. So I will call it Odinus, save, etc. You can delete them, and so on and so on. And then the same project for mobile. I think that's built. I already had it pre-built. So I have my web project and I have my mobile project now. And it's pretty much very, very similar, where I can also go and then check out audience picture. I can go and see the dashboard, just like it's here. So I can see the dashboard, make a search for Odin, etc., etc. And then I can search one in here. And it's pretty cool. And then since we are in Valhalla, right, like I think I deserve a place amongst the gods. So I can add myself as Sebastian, the broken horn. I mean, you have to have a cool name like to beat these guys. And then if I navigate, there it is. That's me. So yeah, I'm one of the gods. Welcome to Valhalla, which is pretty cool. So now let me jump to the code so that you actually see what is going on and how this whole thing was built. So one of the first things, we have the app module. And in here, we're using the HTTP client module, but there's also the HTTP client in-memory web API module. And then similarly, we do something similar for the native version of it. So you see I have app.module.tns.ts. So that's the mobile version of it. And then in here, I'm just importing the NativeScript version of the HTTP client module. But the HTTP client in-memory web API service is the same, and so is the in-memory data service. We also have the hero service, or like it should be now the God service, which allows you to add new records, search for specific ones, or get all of the gods that we have in there. And then if I look, for example, at the heroes page, heroes component.ts first. So you see, we only have, so this is my whole component. We only have one .ts file here, which exposes functionality like get heroes, add, and delete. And then I have my HTML, which displays all the gods, gives me like an input field where I can enter the new god's name and the button to add a new god. And then similarly, basically, in NativeScript, we do something very similar. So again, I have a text field instead of an input where I can enter the god's name. And then I have a button which calls at hero_name.text. In the web version, we are using ng4 and then create like an ordered list to display all the heroes. So we're grabbing all the records from the heroes array. While in NativeScript, I'm using a list view, but I'm grabbing all the records from the heroes. You see, so like the only real difference here are the two HTML files. And outside of that, everything works really cool. Another really cool thing is in the dashboard, I showed you like the search functionality, which is really cool because I have this hero search component where the search is implemented and I can basically, as I type new characters, the list of heroes changes or the gods. And then this is exposed as app hero search. So in my dashboard now, I can go to the dashboard component HTML. You can see I'm exposing the app hero search in here. And then the same thing I'm doing for NativeScript, where I'm exposing just the app hero search. So you could even start sharing components that you build yourself within the project, which is really, really cool. So I think that's pretty cool. So let me jump back to my presentation. So this was basically a bit of a story on if I start from scratch, I can generate a new project, and then I can start adding new components, et cetera, and then eventually I build an application. But then I'm pretty sure that most of you here, you already have a web application, and you would want to make it code sharing later on, right? So, and this is basically the main part of this presentation. So again, we use schematics, the schematics you saw before, the Angular /schematics, where we implemented a functionality to actually migrate your project into a code sharing structure. So if you have an existing Angular project created with the Angular CLI, let's say you called ng-new at some point in the past, what you can do is call ng-add NativeScript /schematics. So we implemented the ng-add functionality. And what this does, it takes your project and it converts it into a code-sharing structure. So it doesn't necessarily convert all your components on all your modules, but the project is in a code-sharing structure. It's ready for your migration process. So then after that, you can still call ngserve, and you will still build the application as you want. And then from then on, you can also call TNS run for Android and iOS, and it will give you like a very basic application. We're also working on like the reverse scenario, and this is under development, and it's not going to work for the next few months. But the idea will be very similar, where you could create a NativeScript project and then call like add web using the generators. And then this will, again, convert your project into code sharing, and you could run ngserve and then TNS run from it. So, OK, so we covered the story of I have a web project, now I have a code sharing project, but all my components are web only. Right? So what you can do is start migrating all the components. So migration could be either done manually, or you could use a schematic that migrates it for you. So what you could do, if I have this home component over here, I could call ng generate migrate component, then -- name and the name of the component. And this only does part of the magic for you. Okay? It won't magically convert your HTML to what we expect in NativeScript, because a div can literally do a million different things, and that's difficult to translate, right? But what it will do is basically it will copy, you keep your like .ts file and the web files, but then you append the .tns HTML and .tns CSS or SAS or whichever styling you're using. But then also the .tns.html file will contain like a commented out template from your web. So you could later on like look at it and then migrate bit by bit as you go. And if you have a very big application where you have like hundreds of components divided loads of modules, you obviously don't want to do it one by one for the component. So we have a very similar schematic for migration of modules. So what you can do is just call ng generate migrate module -- name, passing the name of the module. And then this will first use the convert component schematics for every component in there. So you convert all your components. And then you add files like menu-common.ts, where you can share what modules you should be using or components. And then you additionally split your ng module file into two. And basically, when I built this schematic, I felt like this. I was like, yes. I can't dance like this guy. I tried. So that's going to be a demo number 2. So I want to show you how the migration actually is done. It's going to be a very basic example. It's, again, the tour of heroes. So what I'm going to run is ng add NativeScript /schematics. So you can see it's like the command. And then this basically just will go and then start adding the files that I need to my project. So one of the first things that's really happening is, oops, where is my package.json? In the package.json, we're adding like NativeScript Angular, NativeScript theme, so like NativeScript-specific NPM packages, and the NativeScript schematic gets installed as well, and a bunch of other things. And then once the migration is over, I can actually still call ngserve from here, and I can run tns run iOS -- bundle, which will take about a minute, but then I can move on to start migrating, to migrate my project. So first thing that I should probably do is go to my app module.ts. So we have our HTTP client module here, and we have this HTTP client in memory API module. Okay. So I'm going to take this and put it over here. Let's fix the imports. Then I'm going to uncomment the HTTP client module. Let's save that. Okay, so my app module for NativeScript is ready. Next thing is we can copy over navigation. So the navigation path can be shared, but as we migrate component by component, at the beginning it's better to have them split, but later on you can merge them into one. But what I will do is copy the routes I have from the web and then replace them with the mobile one. And let's say we're only going to start with like the heroes component. I think the mobile, yeah, so the first thing is like when you build the application, you will just get this one big screen that just says auto-generated works. There's nothing at the beginning, right? This is just the beginning of the migration. But what I can do from here, really, let me find one that is free, okay. I can go and migrate the heroes component, right? Okay, so ng generate migrate component -- name, and I'm going to migrate heroes component. And that goes and just added the additional files. So you generated the .tns HTML, .tns CSS, but also added the component to the app module.tns over there. And then I can also do the same for hero detail. So let's just convert the hero details component. Okay. So as it is right now, my path should be working to navigate to heroes component and hero details component. Cool. All right, let's save that. That should, yep. So basically our heroes component just looks like this. It's just one big label. So we can now start converting that heroes component. So if I go to the heroes component, you can see, and as promised, the original template from the web is pasted here. So I can basically use it as my example. So what I will do is delete all that. So first I have this label that I'm using for like labeling the particular page. And I think action bar is a good example for using as a title of the page. So that's going to be my page. And then I can add, for example, a label that says God name text, okay, and a text field. By the way, I'm not going to format. I'm just going to drop the components in there so that we just save a bit of time. But we could basically say something like this. So text field, it's going to be, let's say, God name. Text is empty at the beginning, fair enough. And then I'm going to add a button, which will say add. And then on top, you can see I'm calling here something like this. So I'll copy this over. And it's not hero name, it's God name dot text. And that should be a good beginning. Okay. So I copied over this functionality where I can add new gods, etc. Now I want to copy the functionality where I display all the gods in here. So let me do that. Okay, so I'm going to add a list view. And this, I don't need all those things. So this list view, as a source, it will use the heroes, just like there. And then for each hero, so I'm going to do this let hero equals item. I want to display like the hero's name and maybe like a trash icon to delete the hero, okay? So I will use a grid layout for this, where I will have each row will be automatically the size it needs to be, and the size of each column will be something like that, where I'm just saying use as much as you need, use as much as you can, and as much as you need. So first, the first label is going to be hero.id. The next label will be hero.name. And the final one, it will be, I can also use a label, why not? Oops, not this one. I want to use a NativeScript label. NS label. And this one, as a text, I'm just going to use a trash icon. Oh, I actually had it. You could see I practiced. And then basically, that trash icon will call the same thing, like a delete hero. I could have used the button, but I just wanted to do it this way. So on tap, so if you tap on the label, it should delete it. And one last thing, if let's say somebody taps on the name of the hero, you could see in here we're using a router link. So for navigation, I can basically add something like this. So instead of router link, I am using NS router link. So because that gives me also ability to add some page transition, animation, etc. So if I save this, that should work. This is usually a big challenge. I mean, I was doing a lot of code changes. Ooh. So styling didn't exactly work. Oh, because I didn't say which column to put each of those items. OK, fair enough. Column number 1, column number 2, and column number 0. Although 0 is default. There you go. So we have our gods in here. It's not the prettiest thing, but I can also add Sebastian, and the adding functionality should work. And I can remove Thor, because I don't actually like Thor that much. I like Loki, though. Loki's cool. And then if I press on Loki, it kind of navigates to the hero details component where I can just go on and then kind of migrate those components. So I think that's pretty cool. Like that gives you the idea of what sort of things we can do. And like if I really want to, I could do some styling over here, but that's basically out of scope of what I really wanted to show you. So in the interest of time, I'll head back to my presentation. So just to recap, if you have a web project, you can use ng-add NativeScript/schematics to convert your project into a code sharing structure, and then use those additional schematics to migrate component and to migrate a module, which basically does all the file processing for you. You just have to then implement what goes into the HTML. There are some other challenges that you might encourage, but that's outside of the scope of this talk. There's one thing. There's actually 2 ways of doing code sharing. So this one, we call it like the schematics way. Is very good when your web and mobile projects are very similar in many ways, like where you have like at least like 80% overlap of what sort of pages you want to show on both web and mobile. If your projects are vastly different and you want to only share, let's say, 30% of what you have, then what you can use is this solution called XPlat, which is based on the Narwhal's NX. I haven't worked on this one, but it's basically, this is for more complex projects. So you could go and look up some more information, like our partners in studio, they work on it. So I think that's pretty cool. So yeah, like if you want to learn more about it, come and find me after the session. I think we'll have like meet your heroes thing, or we should call it meet your gods by now. But yeah, thank you for your time. Thank you.